All right, let's just jump right in. If you go deep into the vast, wide-open spaces of Inner Mongolia, right near the Gobi Desert, you'll find something that, well, it makes absolutely no sense at all.
I mean, you're not going to find any golf courses or museums out here. Nope. The only things around are basically a highway that leads to nowhere and an airstrip that doesn't even work. So what is this building? Well, get this. It's an almost perfect full-scale replica of Taiwan's presidential office building.
And, just in case there was any doubt about what it's for, Chinese state media actually released footage of its troops using this thing to practice invading their small, democratic neighbor. I mean, it is just deeply unsettling to see.
But here's the twist. For almost a decade now, we've heard that Taiwan is on the brink of war, and yet it hasn't happened. So what does that tell us? It tells us we are way overdue for a closer look, one that goes beyond the same old dire warnings we keep hearing.
Okay, so let's get into it. It really feels like every few months, right? A new, super alarmist prediction hits the headlines, and it just reinforces this idea that a conflict is totally inevitable. And these warnings, they often come from some very, very high-ranking officials.
I mean, when a top general says something that direct, it really creates a powerful narrative, doesn't it? The logic feels so simple. Where there's this much smoke, there's got to be fire. But to really understand what's going on, we need to push past the predictions and start with the cold, hard facts, the stuff that pretty much everyone agrees on.
And all this leads to one crucial question. Why not? I mean, China has the stated goal, right? And it has the growing capability. So why hasn't it acted? This is the point where the facts stop and the speculation really begins. And it basically splits into two major theories.
So let's look at the first theory. This one is the most straightforward. The idea is that China's just biding its time. It's waiting for that perfect moment, waiting to cross some kind of threshold of military superiority. And once it does, boom, war becomes inevitable.
The real strength of this theory is just how simple it is. I mean, when you hear words like this from Xi Jinping himself, it doesn't take a huge leap to hear, "We can and we absolutely will invade." And then he sets this 2049 deadline for China's so-called rejuvenation. Well, it's pretty easy to see that as a hard deadline for unification too.
And look, this isn't just talk. China is seriously ramping up its use of these so-called gray zone tactics. These coercive actions that fall just short of an actual war. So as the tension builds, this theory seems really strong. But it also raises a pretty big question. Why would you broadcast your intentions and give your opponent all that time to prepare?
And that question brings us right to our second theory. This one argues that China's aggression isn't actually the prelude to some unprovoked attack. Instead, it's a calculated reaction, something designed specifically to stop Taiwan from ever declaring independence.
So which is it? A planned attack or a calculated reaction? You see, the first theory suggests this is a major break from the past, but the second one, it sees a familiar pattern playing out. To have any hope of figuring out which is right, we've got to zoom out and look at a much wider timeline.
And when you do look at that longer timeline, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. See, when Taiwan is led by the pro-engagement KMT party, things warm up. The presidents actually meet, they sign trade deals, but when the more skeptical DPP party is in power, China completely switches gears. It drops the carrot and picks up the coercive stick to push Taiwan away from what it considers its red lines. This really suggests there's a logic to its aggression.
Okay, so with that pattern in mind, quotes like this one from Xi start to make a lot more sense, right? The two parts of that sentence aren't contradictory at all, they're just two sides of the very same strategy. China might prefer a peaceful path, sure, but it seems to believe that the threat of force is the only thing that keeps that peaceful path open, by scaring Taiwan away from ever declaring full independence.
But hang on, why would China even prefer peace, especially while it's building up its military like crazy? Well, the answer is pretty simple, because the cost of an actual war would be absolutely staggering for everyone involved.
Just think about this for a second. Taiwan produces something like 92% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. We're talking about the chips that power literally everything. Our phones, our cars, you name it. They are the absolute, irreplaceable heart of the entire global tech economy. A war would just sever that supply chain instantly. In fact, one study estimated that a one-year war would shrink America's GDP by 5 to 10%, and China's
a catastrophic 25 to 35%. I mean, Xi Jinping's whole goal of national rejuvenation is tied to economic prosperity. That is just completely fundamentally incompatible with an invasion of Taiwan.
And believe me, the damage doesn't stop there. About 90% of the world's biggest container ships sail right through the Taiwan Strait. Rerouting them? That would cost billions. Oh, and not to mention, nearly a fifth of China's own population lives in the coastal provinces right across from Taiwan. They would be directly in harm's way. The cost, when you add it all up, it's just unthinkable.
So, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with these two conflicting theories? Well, maybe the ambiguity is the point. Maybe China actually benefits from the rest of the world not really knowing its true intentions. And that right there reveals the central dilemma, the real catch-22 of this whole situation. We can't definitively prove if China is just trying to deter independence or if it's genuinely preparing an attack. Why? Because for deterrence to actually work, it has to look exactly like a real preparation for war.
And this, of course, creates a massive danger. The challenge becomes this: how do you prepare for war as if it's coming, without falling into the trap of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the very actions you take, based on that assumption of war, are what end up causing it in the first place?
And make no mistake about it, China is already waging a psychological war. Back in 2017, only about 41% of Taiwanese people, a minority, believed China would attack if they declared independence. Just 3 years later, that number jumped to 61%, a clear majority. This is Beijing's strategy in action. It's about slowly, methodically, wearing down Taiwan's will to resist.
And that's really why all of this matters so much. Because if the world, and especially the US, just adopts this fatalistic view that war is a sure thing, well, that could do a lot more harm than good. It could completely dishearten our allies and end up doing China's work for it by creating this crushing sense of hopelessness.
Because here's the bottom line. An invasion is not guaranteed. And that means our actions, our policies, our very understanding of the situation, all of it, can still influence the outcome. And so that leaves us with the one central, critical question we have to keep asking ourselves over and over.